I'm pumped for our next guest because offensive line play is going to be pivotal for the Browns, and our next guest for nearly a decade when he was in the league was one of the guys that set the bar. Mikey, you have a read before we bring in Mitchell?
I don't have a read. I just want to say we're honored to welcome Super Bowl champion, former Chief Micthell Schwartz.
Look at that smile, baby.
Making his UCSS debut.
I remember that smile. Mitchell, it's great to see you, man. So we're trying. Is his audio up? I don't think his audio is up.
Yeah, no, he's
just pranking us?
I didn't hear him. So Mitchell, one of the things that we've been watching really closely is the play of the offensive line. It's going to be pivotal this year, clearly with the run game being essential to the Browns. What did you make? Did you get to see the Browns season opener? And if so, what did you make of how the line performed? Yeah, I didn't think we had his audio, Mike.
We're seeing levels. Hold on. This is the second time this has happened.
Hold on, Mitchell. There's a button switch. There's a gremlin in our board.
We'll get back to you in 1 sec.
Yeah, so we're gonna work out that bug and then see if we can get. I'm glad that we actually have a chance before he comes on to talk just a little bit about his career. I remember when the Browns drafted him. I think he was a second round pick. On draft day, it's not the sexy pick.
Right.
And I'm like, wait, who? What? Mm-hmm. And then I saw him in first couple of games, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, this dude's legit. I knew he was an Iron Man, but I always just thought that, like, Joe Thomas was the Iron Man.
Yeah.
But I was looking at his bio. He didn't miss a snap until his 7th season in the league.
Right.
Even then, it was just a couple. He didn't miss a game until his last season in the league, and he missed it because of COVID.
Wow. Man.
Like, this guy just played. He was Joe Thomas.
I was salty.
Me
the Browns
too.
didn't sign him.
That was one of the things that never made sense to us.
And I didn't like the Alex Mack. I never understand.
And if you ever talk to anybody, nobody could ever explain why that happened.
Let's do take two real quick. I think we
Okay.
got the audio issue figured out. Mitchell, sorry about that. Technology isn't always our best friend. But
you're fixed now? There it is.
There it goes.
Mitchell, welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're thrilled to have you. We were just talking about your Iron Man abilities and how you never missed a snap until I believe it was midway or late in your 7th season, and it wasn't until your last season, your 9th season, where you missed a start, and that was because of COVID. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think it was actually towards the end of my 8th season before I missed a snap, and I remember talking to Joe Thomas, and we were talking about that snap streak, and I was like, man, I'd really like to break it because you have every other record. I would just want like one thing that I could potentially have over you, and that would have been it, but I couldn't beat him because, Joe's Joe, and of course he gets all the records, so I got pretty far, and I was pretty proud of that, and then it came out just for a few plays, hurt my knee, and came back in. But, yeah, it's something that I saw Alex Mack. We had some really durable guys in the O-line room, and it's a lot of luck, to be fair. I mean, you can only, hope that a bunch of guys don't land on your leg the wrong way for so long. But there is an element of preparation and taking care of your body, and the stuff Joe does, throughout the week, all the stretching, all the stuff that looks really boring and monotonous, and that's what made him who he was and made him so special.
Mitchell, before we get to the Browns game this week, we were talking about your time here, and you were the one that got away. How in the world did that happen? What happened? Did they try and bring you back? They were an abomination at the time. Were you one of those guys who was like, you know what, I'm good, I'm going elsewhere? How did it happen that you got away from Cleveland?
No, I mean, my gut was to stay there. I think a misconception is that guys want to leave. I think for the most part, you've been in the city for 3, 4, 5 years. You make a ton of friends. I mean, Joe Thomas, Alex Mack, John Greco, all guys who are in my wedding. So, awesome friends, lifelong friends. Like, you don't want to leave that work environment. I met my wife in Cleveland. Her family's there. Her friends are there. And so, you kind of just want to stay. Now, people were advising me, hey, you might want to go somewhere else. I think the football could be a little bit better if you got out. But, I don't know that. My only experience in the NFL is being in Cleveland and going in that O-line room every single day. I mean, obviously the on-field success wasn't exactly what we wanted, but every single day we had such a good time together and we had so much fun. And so I didn't necessarily want to leave that. So going kind of into my 4th season, Cleveland wasn't really looking to re-sign me or anything. And we just kind of realized, like, all right, we'll wait till after the season and, kind of figure that out. And so after the season, I believe people got fired again. Sashi took over.
That's a good guess.
It was Ray Farmer.
If you have to guess that people got fired,
2 years.
Say people got fired.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to make sure, no, but Farmer got fired, Sashi took over, and so it was a bit of all right, well, let's get our bearings, let's hire people, let's kind of figure out the organizational plan, and then we'll get back to you. And it kept taking a while for them to get back to us, and we kind of wanted to just have an offer on the table once we got to that free agency period where we were allowed to talk to teams, and it took a lot of kind of digging to get an offer finally, and they did send out an offer, but it was kind of modeled on the Brian Bulaga deal, which Green Bay notoriously has no guaranteed money past the first year. So it wasn't exactly what we wanted in terms of total value, in terms of annual average, in terms of guarantees. So we said, thanks, we're going to see what free agency has to offer. I mean, as the player, once you're past that fourth year and the games are over, I think it's pretty dumb to sign with your team before free agency hits, because why wouldn't you see what's out there? And so I go out, see some other offers. The market isn't quite as strong as we expected, but we go back to Cleveland, try to negotiate a little bit, get some more guaranteed money, get some more annual average, and then wake up the next morning and hear that there's no offer on the table for me anymore. And, there was never a deadline. There was never, hey, we just, got to wrap this up before free agency officially hits, kind of none of that stuff. So that was a disappointing part is, I probably was pretty close to coming back because the other offers out there weren't what I was expecting. And so it also makes me think, realizing, I left, Alex Mack left, I think Travis Benjamin, Deshaun Gibson. There are a lot of really good players, and I think the organizational philosophy was, offer these guys deals that kind of on paper appear strong-ish deals, but realistically they're going to turn down, they're going to get more in free agency because we want to be able to say, hey, we tried to retain them, we offered X amount of money, they just wanted more somewhere else. But I think in my case, I was actually close to taking it. So they're like, we don't want to spend the money this year, so no more offer.
That makes it even worse
so yeah, that's
to know that they didn't have to move much to keep you, and they still didn't.
Wow. Sometimes I don't think this organization makes the best decisions. Historically speaking.
Oh, my God. They offered you an indentured servant deal and then took it back. Nah, that's a little bit too much. I'm like, that just goes to show. I always said, some teams ain't trying to win. There's a few teams every year trying to win.
But you know what?
And they were not trying to.
That's why they still have $50 million in cap space, because they've been rolling it and rolling it and rolling it and rolling it.
Well, that's true, but that all goes away next year.
Absolutely, and it cost them good players along the way.
And
like
Mitchell, so for you, it works out. You win you're obviously a Super Bowl champion now. What was that whole experience like after experiencing some difficult seasons, and that's being nice in Cleveland? You end up at the highest of highs and a Super Bowl champion, a couple of Pro Bowls under your belt. What was the tail end of the second half of your career like compared to the first half?
It's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm someone probably was a little bit jaded on the Cleveland experience and just kind of watching Joe, and a guy who can be that dominant and never get to the playoffs, never really have the team success that you want, and you realize you're kind of just a tiny part of this whole thing, and that you can be the best in the world at what you do, but it might not matter, that much in the grand scheme of things. So I kind of always had that philosophy that you just kind of do what you can control. It would be great to have team success. I mean, that's definitely a big reason I did choose Kansas City once I decided on that. But it wasn't like, all right, my whole career is all to win a Super Bowl. I wanted to play good football. I wanted to have good fun, and I wanted the team success, but it wasn't something that I, was straining myself to do all the time. And I kind of understood that I was a piece of that puzzle. And then, we had some playoff success. It was a lot of fun, but it's also disappointing to play more games and to be really disappointed after it. You're playing higher stress games against better competition. You're getting paid less. Going to the playoffs and losing just sucks. There's really no good way to end the season unless you win the Super Bowl. And then once we finally do, it clicks. And I'm like, oh, man, this is incredible. And it honestly kind of changed my life. After that, we realized, Kansas City was home. So we bought a place to remodel and live here forever. The connection with the city, with the fans, with teammates, it all kind of fell into place for me after that, and I realized just how special it was. And so I didn't know that it would mean that much to me until it happened, and obviously very glad it did, because it's just it's such an amazing experience. And even seeing a guy like Alex Mack go through that experience with the Falcons, obviously we know how that game ended up, but you still don't necessarily realize just how cool and how special it can be. And like I said, really honestly, just like a life changer. It's incredible what that can do for you.
Mitchell, one of the big things for offensive linemen is you could be a great offensive lineman. You just mentioned Joe Thomas, and you might not have the impact that you want because you don't have the pieces and parts, and namely the guy under center. When you were in Cleveland, we know the T-shirt and the jersey with all the rotating guys. When you got to Kansas City and you started playing with Patrick Mahomes, what was your first impression of, oh, this is different? Oh, we might got something here.
Yeah, well, when I first got to KC, it was Alex Smith, and even that was like, oh my God, like this quarterback is doing stuff I've never seen before. The previous year we had Josh McCown in Cleveland. I had the same experience with Josh. Like Josh was doing things that none of the other quarterbacks I played with could do, and I remember a game against Baltimore. There was, an under front, kind of 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. Terrell Suggs is playing outside linebacker, and he tells us like, hey, don't block Suggs, block this linebacker instead. And I kind of like look back at him like, are you serious, dude? And sure enough, Suggs dropped, the linebacker came, and I was like, how do you know that? Like, this is just a base front. Wow. We're supposed to 5 down it. And for me, like, Josh McCown was, obviously he's played for all the teams and all the schemes, but like that was a moment of, wow, I didn't know this could happen with a quarterback. And then you go to Kansas City, Alex Smith, extremely sharp mentally, obviously, physically doesn't have the downfield passing, just pure arm strength, even though he led the NFL in downfield passing the year before Pat took over. And then you get to Pat, and it's the combination of the body, the brain, kind of all those things coming together, the field vision, the leadership, the awareness. And yeah, it's the thing that was most fun was going back to Twitter after games and catching up on my timeline and seeing all the incredible plays. Because for the most part, I'm blocking, and especially as an offensive tackle at the top of the pocket, like you kind of get to the point where your back is to the play. And so I'm not really able to see a lot of his awesome plays. So it took Twitter, it took the next day in the film room, the offense line coach stopping the film, just being like, hey guys, watch 15 on this one. And you're just seeing things that you've never seen before. And it's really special. And, it's kind of hard to describe just the kind of confidence you get as a lineman, as a team, when, I know the guy behind me is going to do what he's doing, but also that maneuverability, that escapability. If I do screw up, he's also going to help me out with his legs.
So summing it up, it was really hard to leave Cleveland. Hey, you know what?
Mahomes wasn't drafted yet, so I didn't know that was going to be my fate.
Right.
I don't know if we can do this, but I just saw breaking news. The Browns have unveiled what their field scheme is going to look like. Remember, they let the fans vote. Mikey, I don't know if you can pull this up on Tag Board.
Yeah,
I'd love to get Mitchell's reaction to this. I like it. This is the one I voted for.
About time.
And I think that is absolute fire. I love the Browns in the end zone with the logo and the AFC, but I don't know. I love the Brownie at midfield. I think it's great. Time. Mitchell, what do you think of that?
I think that's pretty awesome. I think it's got, it seems like teams are going a little bit more towards like the classic and vintage, having that logo in the middle. I do like that. The helmet's pretty cool, but it's just a helmet at the end of the day. So having something that's a little more unique, a little more, that the fans can really have a connection with, and looks pretty angry running that ball. Got the Heisman stiff arm. So I think that's pretty cool.
Nothing says intimidation like an elf.
Yep. If that doesn't strike fear into the heart.
But it's a large-scale elf, so it's not really an elf.
It actually is. It's a giant elf.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
y'all hating. Y'all hating, man. Y'all be hating. Y'all just want the vanilla. Just wear the white jerseys. I remember it was a time in my life I didn't even see the Browns wear any brown jerseys. They just had white on the whole time.
All through the 80s.
All through the 80s. No alternates. And I used to ask my dad, they not have enough money for 2 jerseys or something? And he was like, son, it's not. It's just the way the uniforms work. But
Mitchell, did you ever care about what kind of jersey you were wearing? Everybody gets hung up on the colors of the jersey and stuff. Did you get excited?
Oh, the excitement is going to your locker and realizing you're not wearing white on white. White on white is an offensive lineman's disaster. Yeah. It's the way to make us look the fattest and the most disgusting. So if I could go to the locker and not see white on white, I was stoked.
Look at those big sloppy babies. That's what it looks like.
Every single time these players come on here, they validate it. You guys might not think the jerseys count, but when you go to the locker room and you see them, you be like, man, we already gonna lose.
I will say, with Cleveland's jerseys in particular, especially with the newer version. I forgot if that was 14 or 15 that they were unveiled, but with the newer ones, it's the socks that pulled the jersey together. So the top and bottom combos, whether it's the white, the brown, the orange, like those go together really well and kind of are interchangeable. But depending on what sock choice they make, it pulls the whole thing together or it just looks terrible.
Wow.
And so it's one of the weird quirks because there are those colors and because Cleveland seemingly has like 8 different socks that you could wear on game day. Like whichever one they choose to go with the jersey kind of completes the look or makes it a disaster.
Mitchell's like a Renaissance man. He's a uniform critic.
Game day
like
fashion.
that's awesome analysis.
I
right
love
there.
you, brother.
Where else are you going to get them?
That's like the pocket square, going with the tie.
Yeah.
He's saying the socks
socks
got
make
to,
the uniform.
they pull it all together. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch everything from week 1, but what's your thumbnail reaction to where we are in the NFL? I know the Chiefs looked very good. I'm not sure what the Cardinals are going to be, but is it the Bills and everybody else? How do you view it right now?
My kind of big picture view is I feel like there weren't as many teams that had really good games that I expected in week 1 or like a ton of optimism. The Browns needed a rookie kicker to nail a 58-yarder to win the game against a Carolina team that most people don't have a ton of expectations for. Obviously the Bills look good, the Chiefs look good, but there are just a lot of teams that even if they won, they just, it was a good game, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, it's week 1 and we saw this and we saw that and now we're really excited and we're going to be 12-5 and, win the division. So I think the league seems to be top heavy right now, especially in the AFC. Bills, Chiefs, I think, Chargers are working their way up there as well. And in the NFC, I mean, as wide open as really a conference could be. And I think that's my biggest takeaway is just the lack of like, oh man, week 1 was awesome. We look great. And I'm super excited for the rest of the year because I know our squad's going to dominate.
Pittsburgh obviously surprised some people by beating Cincinnati. How do you think the AFC North looks, and what do you think that's going to mean going into week 2?
Well, they're all just going to beat up on each other, same as always. That division, especially now, I mean, it kind of got into a bit of an arms race with, Pittsburgh being the stalwart for a while. Ravens get Lamar, they catch up, they surpass. Cincy gets Burrow, they pass. Cleveland the last few years, the success they've had. So all 4 of those teams can do some damage. I still think Pittsburgh, I mean, you had 5 or 6 turnovers and you needed a injury to a long snapper to win a game. So I'm not, super sold on that being the winning formula, especially with Watt injured now. Cincy, very concerning the offensive performance they had. Again, granted, Pittsburgh's defense pretty good, especially when Watt was rolling there, but not playing in the preseason, might have been to Burrow's detriment. So we'll see if he can turn it around a bit. I think Baltimore's kind of the team you're banking on to kind of best infrastructure, best kind of marriage of what they've been in the past and what they should be this year. But of course the defense has question marks as well. I think again, you're trusting it's Baltimore. They're going to figure it out. They always find these rushers in the 3rd, 4th round and they kind of piece together the defense and it looks pretty good at the end of the year. And obviously you guys are all excited about Cleveland. So it should be a pretty good race this year. They should all kind of beat up on each other. So I don't think it's going to be, a 13-4 team that really runs away with it.
Just to be clear, we are hoping that Joe Burrow does not turn it around a bit. I just want to be clear on that. Yeah. We hope he keeps it where it's turned right now.
Mitchell, Jacoby Brissett.
Go.
Yeah. The floor is yours.
All right.
He exited.
Just say less and have it be more loaded.
No, I mean,
this is kind of who he is. It's who he's been the last few years. I think there was a little bit of success early on in his career where you could say, all right, he's young. There's some projection. But I think the projection phase is over. I think, this is kind of the guy. This is who he's going to be. I think that's why, on a larger scale, I mean, I'm not as tied into all the Cleveland media outlets, but I think on a larger scale, the biggest thing I saw was, are they really going to go with Jacoby for the majority of the season? And why aren't they upgrading? Why aren't they trusting to, get somebody else? Because we've all seen what he's been the last couple of years, and it's a guy that in that offense can do enough things to win you a game when the O-line takes over, when the running backs take over, when the defense is doing what they do and Myles is taking over. But I don't think he's a guy that's going to elevate the offense, going to elevate the play of the skill guys. And I don't think he's a guy that, is going to allow his coordinator to be like, all right, we're going to open it up this week. We're going to attack down the field. I think it's going to stay in that run game, play action, kind of quick passes. And you're limiting your top end. We've seen every scheme or every of this kind of Shanahan McVay run scheme that has had a guy similar to this, they've all tried to replace him with someone who has more top end ability. So I think there were maybe a couple moves to be made that they could have gotten someone a little bit better for this run. But you're going to rely again on that run game on the defense, and now with a stud rookie kicker making some kicks at the end of games.
I lost my voice screaming for Jimmy Garoppolo for weeks, but you see where that got us, so whatever. But you mentioned earlier about Joe Burrow, and you thought he should have played in the preseason. We had the discussion yesterday. I don't know if you saw at the start of the show, the start of the game yesterday or Sunday, that the Browns had some problems getting lined up. They had to burn a timeout early. The play clock kept running down on them. Is that a product of not playing in the preseason?
Yeah, I think it is. And there's this element of mental preparation that you don't get by playing in the preseason that I think is probably a little bit more important than the physical. I do think the physical is very important to get into those games, to kind of get the heart rate moving, to get used to a little bit of the physicality. And all right, this is what a guy lining up against me that I don't know, that I'm game plan for. This is what he's going to do. These are my reactions. And it doesn't have to be the whole game. Andy Reid's a guy that plays the starters as much as anybody, and they don't really play into the third quarter. So it's a quarter, it's a couple drives, it's a quarter and a half, potentially the first half, but realistically 30, 35 plays, that's not a ton of plays. But there's that mental component of getting nervous for the game, getting ready for that, the anxiety the night before, the day of, running onto the field for the first time, having gone through I'll just say that Saturday night before the first 15, it gets unveiled, and studying that and making sure that, all those plays are down. So I think that the league is going to start trending more towards playing, quarterbacks and especially lines the first few preseason games because, we saw it go drastically where guys were trying to protect their players, and it just seems like those teams aren't having quite the amount of success in week one that the teams who are playing players have. So I do think there's a benefit to playing in those preseason games and getting, especially that mental strain kind of out of the way and getting ready for what a season's going to look like.
That's great analysis, really, because, I can't speak to all the teams. I don't know how everybody used their starters, but
this is the stat for you guys.
We talked yesterday.
For this?
Because it was clear watching the Browns. It looked like their dress rehearsal in week one, and you can't use regular season games. Or you can't use preseason games for game one in the regular season, and that's what it felt like the Browns did.
5 teams played their starting quarterback and offensive line less than 3 series in the preseason. The Browns, the Rams, the Packers, the Broncos, and the Bengals. How did those 5 teams do offensively?
They're all 0-5. They all lost.
0-5, and they all struggled offensively.
Well, the Browns won.
Right.
Well, the Browns.
Yeah, 1-4.
You're right. Yeah.
1-4.
You're just used to saying Cleveland lost.
The Cleveland
Is that what's going on?
Yeah, you know what? That felt like it felt like a loss. I got to tell you.
But here's the only thing I'd counter in Mitchell. I'd be curious to get your reaction on this. Last year they did the same strategy, and they lost to Kansas City, but they played fantastic. Like they were ready to go in that opener against the Chiefs. Baker played well until they needed him the last couple minutes.
Yeah,
and they looked great.
But they played together a lot.
And is that the difference? That it was Baker was going into his third year at the time. So where's the line on that of who needs preseason and who doesn't, or do you think everybody does?
Right. I think everyone should play just a little bit. Now, since he's different, Burrow did have the injury, so you could say that he didn't play because of that. Whether they would have played him, I don't know. They had a new offensive line. We all know they tried to upgrade the O-line. Didn't work in week one. But I think it is a little bit context dependent. But the flip side, I'm most recently used to Andy Reid, who plays his guys now as much as anybody. Mm-hmm. And he did something different this year. He played, 1 to 2 series in the first game, 3 to 4 series in the second game, kind of into, the end of the first half in the third game. But that third game, he didn't play Mahomes. So he played the rest of the offense with Henne at quarterback. Sorry to bring up Chad Henne to you guys, but that's something that that's something that coach didn't do in the past. He would have the ones go out there, the quarterback would start, and maybe Pat gets pulled after a drive or two, but he completely iced Pat and played everybody else. So I think maybe that might be the trend, that if you play your quarterback at least a little bit in preseason game 1 or game 2, you feel good about a couple drives, he gets some of that game action, you're still able to play basically everybody else a few series. But I don't know. I know we've talked about a couple years ago, it seemed like teams were having success not doing it. But I think the other element to this is the preseason is structured differently now. And the biggest difference is game 4 used to be Thursday, you'd have a weekend off, and then games would start, 10 days later. Now, game 3, which is the last game, is spread out over this 5-day window. So you have teams that have like 17 days between the end of game 3 and the beginning of the preseason, or the beginning of the regular season. So even if you are playing in that game 3, it's still over 2 weeks before your next actual game action, let alone if you aren't playing. So that's where I think this different schedule is going to benefit teams that play a little bit in that game 3, because you have 2 to 2.5 weeks to kind of recover from that. And, I'd like to think 15 to 20 plays isn't a ton. And even again, like you stretch it to 30, that's not that many plays in the grand scheme of things.
Mitchell, I watch the Kansas City Chiefs all the time, and I always make the comparison. It seems that Andy Reid always plays his scheme to what they have. Whether or not it's Kelsey and they lose Tyreek Hill, I turn the game on, and now all of a sudden Juju Smith-Schuster is good again. I'm looking around, and I'm like, Edwards-Helaire now runs the ball, and they're running the ball, and now they're physical. I just don't understand sometimes other coaches getting away from what they have as far as their tools. How does Andy Reid do that in the context of how he gets his people and his team ready to play, in contrast to some people who kind of just have their specific playbook that they put on anybody who comes into the organization?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because there's a couple elements to it. There's one which is, rule number 1 of any offensive coordinator's checklist of things I have to say in my first meeting is, this is your offense. We're going to tailor it to your strengths. They all say that. And then realistically, the majority of them, the reason they get fired and get moved on is because they don't tailor it to their guys' strengths. They do what they're comfortable with and what they think should work. And it ends up not working because, you have guys that don't necessarily fit that. And so obviously coach has the cachet, the kind of bankroll to be able to say, I'm going to do it my way. And if there's a couple bumps here, people are going to trust me and we're going to ride this thing out. But I will say in general, and I don't think the people, the fans, kind of the media that don't interact with him on a daily basis get this, but he is like a very aggressive mindset personality as that coordinator, that coach. I think we kind of see him as this awesome guy. He's a little bit more soft-spoken. He doesn't, talk too much in the media. He makes sure he praises everybody. But kind of behind that, he is really confident. He's really comfortable kind of being on the aggressive side of things. So I think there's the element of he trusts his players and he trusts the good as opposed to fearing the bad. And so he's not thinking like, oh, well, maybe my O-line can't hold up on this. He's like, no, I got these guys. They're good players. They're going to block it up and we're going to attack down the field. So there is that element that he very much has this mindset of attacking, of confidence in his players. And then you as a player get confidence as well. I'm on the front side of this play action, which is every offensive lineman's worst nightmare. And, I run it a couple times and now, okay, well, I locked the guy up, so maybe I can do this. And now the next time he calls it, I have more confidence in it as well. So there's that element that, Coach Reid has that mindset that people don't necessarily know about. But a coach should, tailor his offense to his players. It's just the coaches that don't have that confidence, that don't have that trust in the players to kind of mix things up. That's when, things start to look a little bit different. And I think you see that a little bit more with kind of this run, play action, scheme where it's harder to mix things up unless you have that top end quarterback. I mean, we saw that with McVay, that once he got Stafford, okay, now we can go shotgun, now we can go 5 wide. But when you don't trust the quarterback, when you don't have the guy that you think can do it, you do lean into the more conservative side of things and you kind of force your scheme on your players.
Mitchell, I have a point and a question. First of all, my point, we showed some of your very impressive stats earlier, lifetime career stats, and they are great, but I will quibble with just one, and that's the one that said that you have 0 penalties in playoff games. I think the Browns deserve a lot of credit for that. I feel like we helped you stack up some of that stat early on. Like, we didn't give you a lot of opportunities to have any penalties in playoff
Well, you can't divide by 0, so, maybe not.
That's true. I'm just saying it's kind of a cheat one.
He is a Cal Berkeley guy.
Yeah. And my question, though, is you said that your wife is from here. That's great. And that means you have to be stuck here sometimes. You have to come back and visit us whether you like it or not and hang out and everything. When you are in town, what are a couple of Cleveland spots that you like to check out, whether it's a bar, restaurant, exhibit, whatever you got to check out when you're in town?
That's a good question. So we usually stay in Crocker Park. The hotel there is somehow insanely cheap. Like, I don't know how,
Nothing
because the
else at
hotel's
Crocker Park
pretty
is
good and
cheap.
that area is awesome. But like, we usually drive in, we've got our 2 dogs and the dogs love it there. We can walk them every day, a bunch of smells, a bunch of stores. So that's the place that we typically stay, you know, food wise. We do like Town Hall. We like, you know, Chef Rocco. So Fahrenheit's always a good one. Kind of the fast casual. We love Aladdin's. You know, we're big into Mediterranean food, so that's one that we kind of always try to hit, which, you know, sounds like it doesn't necessarily need to be a destination eating spot, but like usually we have a long car ride and we kind of just order it when we're 30 minutes out. We pick it up and we get to the hotel room and we go to town. So yeah, a lot of the you know, I'm not going to really say anything that people probably don't know about. We kind of just hit the old favorites, and
That's cool.
those usually tend to be the first few that we think about.
Aladdin's is good stuff.
Yeah,
It is.
well, the chicken sandwich at Town Hall is like, you're full for 2 days.
Yeah, it's good sandwich.
Good food. Hey, before we let you go, I got to ask you the question about Andy Reid dominating, towering over the competition in the punt, pass, and kick competition when he was like in the 6th grade. Before we show the video, Mikey, hold on. I'm sure you've seen it. Did you guys used to just ride him forever on that video?
No, but it does get brought up like every now and again. Like maybe someone will slip in the photo during a presentation, or you're kind of in the dog days of the season. There it is. So he's allegedly the same age as all those other kids.
Allegedly.
And he's 3 times the size. It's amazing. But no, every now and again, if you know, maybe Pat throws it into something, or one of the coaches, you know, there's a kind of a tradition where on, I think it was Saturday mornings, that one of the coaches who did the presentation would kind of work in, as he was showing some college clips of, you know, situational stuff, he'd work in clips of guys in college and kind of tie it all together. So, you know, every now and again, you know, Andy Reid might have gotten a shout out in that.
It never, ever fails to
Just imagine
crack
being one of
me
those
up.
other kids there watching that.
Their parents had to be
Yeah.
like, someone's dad is on the field.
Is this a
Check his
prank?
ID.
In a real Rams uniform. That's not like the youth league
Yeah.
Rams uniform. That is an official Rams player's uniform that he's wearing.
That's a 4X helmet.
That's
That's a 4X. He has a lineman's head. He has his face is outside of his face mask.
He's 12 there.
That's a huge helmet, bro.
Oh my
What do you got,
gosh.
Mikey?
Mike McNuggets, our producer, has a question for you before we let you go.
Last one here, Mitchell, but I got to ask, how in the world would you block Myles Garrett?
Very nervously and probably not effectively. I remember, luckily, I haven't really ever had to block him, which is awesome. But I remember asking Joe, all right, first off, the whole hilarious, like, Myles honed his craft while going against Joe Thomas in practice. Joe was practicing like once a week at the time, so they barely face each other in practice.
Dispel that,
so
man.
they didn't have too many reps. And the one video that came out was like a screen pass that Joe was purposely trying to ride him upfield, and everyone's like, oh, Myles, blow by Joe. But I talked to Joe, and I was like, dude, tell me about this guy. And he goes, he's Von Miller quick and Khalil Mack strong. And I was like, no, like, I call Joe Mr. Hyperbole. Like, he tends to lean into, you know, the most ridiculous statement he can make. I was like, there's no way. He's like, no, I'm not joking about this one. He's Von Miller quick and Khalil Mack strong.
That's
and I think
crazy.
we've all seen, like, that's the perfect way to describe it.
Horrifying.
And yeah, as an O-lineman, I mean, you just try to hang on for dear life, and he's going to win some. You know, you go into that game, you're not expecting a perfect outcome. You're just hoping that he doesn't take over the game.
Mitchell, I keep lying. I have one more question. As I'm listening to you, you're obviously a very bright guy. Your knowledge of the game is incredible. I could see you coaching. I could see you in the booth as a color analyst for a game, just because the way you see things and the way the way you dissect the game, it's obviously very good. What is your post-football life like, and do you have any ambition to go into either one of those avenues?
Coaching, not traditionally in the coaching sense. You know, those guys work crazy hours, and for the most part, they say, if you've made enough money, don't do this unless you're crazy and you just like absolutely can't get enough of it. But I could see a scenario where I could kind of be a consultant. I could get, you know, called and, hey, can you help us with this guy, or what do you see with that guy? I think, I watch enough football anyway. I kind of have an understanding on, you know, which offensive linemen are playing well, or which guys could use a couple nuggets of advice. So I could see something like that. and in the media world, just kind of doing various stuff here and there, similar to, I keep bringing up Joe, but that 33rd team that we're working with, sign on to that. So at least I'll have a platform to kind of do a couple longer form things every week. And, it's difficult. I don't get the all 22 film myself, and I don't, have the greatest editing capabilities. So as much as I love to do some more offense line breakdowns and kind of do the stuff that Baldy's doing and show off some cool plays, it's a little bit out of my scope of talent. So I think I'm always going to be involved in football, stay in it. What that looks like, I'm not exactly sure. As an announcer, I love football so much. I don't know that I want to give up my weekend of just being in my basement watching all the games to be on the road and to travel. And eventually, once we have kids, I don't want to be missing, kid stuff on the weekends during the fall. So I'm not sure that that's, the perfect role for me either. So I'll probably just kind of do little things here and there. And if things crystallize and they make sense for me, I'll continue with it.
Very good. Listen, it was a total pleasure having you on, Mitch, and it's great to see you again, and enjoy the rest of the 2022 season.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, guys.
We're sorry we lost you, but we're glad that our stupidity got you a Super Bowl win.
Thank you.
Bye, man.
Well
Thank
said.
you.
I could see